This is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Friday, August 7th, 2026, presented by La Quinta by Wyndham. I'm Buster Olney, working from my home in Montana. Taylor Schwenk, Kenny Legan are working back in Connecticut, producing the show. And today we'll be talking with Jesse Rogers about Tarik Skubal's first days with the Dodgers. Paul Ambekides and Sarah Langs will join us. But first, what a crazy game in Boston Thursday night. The top of the first is brought to you by La Quinta by Wyndham. The White Sox led the Red Sox repeatedly in that game. From the third inning through the ninth inning, Chicago either took the lead or held it. In fact, that would wind up extending into extra innings. But with two outs in the bottom of the ninth inning, Luis Arraez tied the score.
To Luis Arraez. And a ground ball up the middle, base hit, into center field. White will score. 7-7. Absolutely relentless, this team.
The White Sox took the lead in the 10th, and the Red Sox tied it. And the same thing happened in the 11th inning. And in the 12th inning, Chicago moving ahead, Boston tying it. And then in the bottom of the 13th inning, Caleb Durbin did this.
1-1 on the way. Up the middle, base hit. Here he comes. Sogard rounding to throw home. And the Sox win again. What a wild ride on a roller coaster tonight. And that's 8 in a row and another sweep. 5 times the Red Sox come from behind to tie, and now they win it in 13.
To repeat, the Red Sox trailed in every inning at some point for 10 straight innings and won the game. It's one of the greatest regular season games of all time. I don't think there's any question. There was another great game with the Chicago team earlier in the day in Wrigley Field. The Cubs were down to their last strike, and Alex Bregman did this.
The 1-2. Drilled left field towards the corner. Gone! And we're tied at 2. And Alex Bregman has his moment here in Wrigley.
And the place is going bonkers.
Later, Pete Crow-Armstrong scored the winning run.
Lefty to lefty, Bush trying to come through. Pete's running. The pitch lower, throw to third base. It's a wild throw. Pete's gonna score. Cubs win the ball game. Cubs win. Pete Crow-Armstrong stealing third. The ball bounced off the glove of Smith. It rolled out into left field. Pete Crow-Armstrong scores the winning run. What a ball game.
That was the top of the first. Earn Wyndham Rewards points with every qualified stay at La Quinta by Wyndham. Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow, you shine. Book your next trip at laquinta.com. Terms and conditions apply. Let's get to it. Jesse Rogers covers baseball for ESPN, and this week, Jesse, that meant writing a lot about Tarik Skubal, who you got to see in Chicago. First off, welcome and great job through the trade deadline. What was your take on Tarik Skubal? I mean, just seeing him around the Dodgers for the first time.
Well, it's funny, Buster. I looked at the Cubs schedule, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago and saw that the Dodgers were here through the deadline. And then as sort of the talk started to lean towards them getting Skubal, I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to have a really busy couple days if he arrives to town right around Monday or Tuesday and then starts the game. And that's exactly what happened. And he said it right. It was kind of like a playoff atmosphere, 40,000 people here debuting for the two-time world champions. And the thing is, he was not his best version of himself, but that was still 6 innings and 2 runs. He did not have his A+ fastball in my mind. Dansby Swanson took him deep. Alex Bregman took him against the wall in right field, but his changeup was really good. His secondary pitches were good. He got a lot of pop-outs. I think it was 6 strikeouts, right? Looked good, but not Tarik Skubal good, but still amazing how Cy Young pitcher cannot have his best stuff and still give more than a quality start. So I thought it was a good first, step for him in the new uniform. And it was interesting hearing Dave Roberts say he's not going to lean on him, even despite all these other pitching injuries. They're saving him, like everyone else, for October when it matters most. Having said that, the Dodgers need to play some better baseball right now.
So I want to ask you this question, I was covering the Yankees back in '98. They won 125 games. That was their second championship in '98 in 3 years, and then the next spring, early in spring training, they traded David Wells in a package with Homer Bush in a package to Toronto for the guy who at that time had won back-to-back American League Cy Young Awards in Roger Clemens, and I remember. At that time, I mean, Roger came in, advance notice, the whole conversation, the Yankees breaking baseball, is this fair? All that stuff was going on. And the X factor is the comfort level of the player. And Roger in that first year was kind of feeling his way. People don't remember that. I mean, Roger in 2000, he was totally comfortable. He was dominant. He was great. But in 1999, he kind of floundered a little bit. Like, it was an adjustment for him. He wound up being the number 4 starter when the postseason started, behind David Cohn and Andy Pettitte and El Duque. And I'm curious about your early sense, and we're in the first days of Tarik Skubal and his comfort level with the Dodgers, especially with this sort of disrupted catching situation they have.
Well, that's a great point about the catching situation. I've never been around a team to flip both their catchers and then bring in the Cy Young winner. But with pitch calm, a little bit easier these days. The pitcher can dictate. But your point about him and getting comfortable, I think on any other team in baseball, it probably would be more difficult. He even used the word chameleon in his first press conference there as a Dodger. He really can just kind of slide in there, as crazy as that sounds, but it's true. It's not like anybody was phased in that locker room when they got him. It wasn't like, I don't think he's going to have daily scrums with media, 20, 30 strong. You know what I mean? Because there's so many other things to be, sort of concerned about with this team. People are going to start talking to Glasnow when he's back, and Snell. And of course, you still have Yamamoto and Ohtani's return. So I really think he can kind of just slide in there and get comfortable and get on an every 5-day routine. The catching thing is one thing, but when you're as good as you are, when you're Tarik Skubal, you're going to get there. I think you're going to get there no matter who's behind the plate. It might not always look perfect early on like it didn't the other night, but by the time October rolls around, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, especially knowing Tarik's personality. But I do think, or in those first starts, there's that feeling of rather than just going out and being free and easy and pitching with an organization you've known forever. Like, and I've talked to David Cohn about this, who, as you remember, was the ultimate hired gun when he was traded in midseason. Talked about that feeling of every time you go out trying to prove something to these players who are really accomplished around you. Mm-hmm. All of these guys have won before, and that's just a different dynamic, and I'm really curious to see how he navigates. It's not going to affect his free agency. He's going to make a lot of money. It's not going to affect his standing in baseball, but it is an adjustment, and that's what I remember from watching Roger in '99. Like, it's kind of a new thing. What's your sense of the Dodgers now? Because I certainly don't see them as being this behemoth that's unbeatable in the way that they're sort of being cast in this general conversation.
I tend to agree with you. It's so hard to judge, though, in the dog days of August when you have an 8, 9, 10 game lead. When they get their pitchers healthy, they might be that behemoth, right? Especially if Ohtani comes back. So, yes, they're beatable. We saw the Diamondbacks beat them 2 years ago in the playoffs. They almost lost the World Series. I mean, it went deep into Game 7 there. So all that is true. However, when the lights are shining brightest, I still expect them to show up. I think a guy like Mookie Betts is still finding his way, but Freeman's going to be there. Muncie's going to be there. Like I said, I do worry about Betts a little bit because he doesn't know what's going on. But I would not, start picking against them just because of a 6-game losing streak. However, if they somehow stay injured on the mound or re-injured, new injuries, that's a different story. But they're so deep when we come to October, it's still going to be hard to bet against.
You just saw the Chicago Cubs sweep the Dodgers. As we stand here today, who do you think is the biggest threat, American League or National League, to the Dodgers' preeminence?
Yeah, well, the Cubs have moved up the ladder a bit for me. It's a great question. I know this is not a popular answer. I'm still going to circle back to the Phillies a little bit because if Sanchez and Wheeler and Luzardo can pitch like they're capable of, that's a trio that can go toe-to-toe with some of the Dodgers guys. Now, I haven't seen Kevin Gausman as a Cub yet. I haven't seen Clayton Holmes as a Cub yet. So it's possible when you add them to Matthew Boyd and the way Shota Imanaga's pitching and the Cubs defense, now you might have a battle in October, low-scoring type of games. This is it for the Phillies, though, man. I know they're switching around their defense and stuff, but if they can slug and they can pitch in a short series, that can win them something. I think it's close, though. I mean, I'm not going to look past Milwaukee if Harrison can look like the first half Harrison before the injury and Logan Henderson and obviously Miz. Atlanta, obviously everyone's critical of them not getting somebody with Sale, but their record is their record. It's tight. It's a great question. I'm going to say Philly just because of that trio of pitchers, and this feels like their last hurrah.
Jesse, as of today, I think that Pete Crow-Armstrong is the clear favorite to win the National League MVP. What do you think?
It's amazing covering that game yesterday where they both hit 2 home runs, and mid-game, Buster, the Vegas odds via DraftKings flipped. It went from Ohtani, the favorite, to PCA. That's kind of cool in the betting world, right? It flips mid-game, even despite Ohtani hitting 2 home runs. If he does not return to the mound until late September, I think you're right. I mean, we're talking about then a DH versus arguably the best outfielder, center fielder in any defensive player in the game. We're not just talking about matching him offensively, Ohtani and PCA. We're talking about the defense as well. And voters will probably keep the pitching in the back of their mind because it was the first half, right? We're all prisoner of recency bias. And I just think if PCA continues to match him at the plate, I think voters are nuanced enough to see what he's doing on defense and give him that edge. But if Ohtani returns in 3 weeks on the mound and gives you a great last month, it might be a different story. But it doesn't feel like he's back in 3 weeks.
What's the feeling around the Chicago White Sox, who were buyers at the deadline? Most notably, they added, former All-Star Luis Castillo in a deal. I know I was surprised. I didn't think Seattle would be able to unload the contract, but the White Sox don't have a lot of financial obligations. By taking on the salary, means they give up less in prospects. They clearly get better through the trade deadline. What's your sense about that team?
Yeah, that whole trade deadline comes down to Luis Castillo. If he can find the fountain of youth, then it's a good deadline. They probably should have picked up a second pitcher. But if Luis Castillo's great, okay, I'll live with it. They did not want to touch their best prospects. Could come back to bite them, Buster. If he's not good and not giving them length, then they're back to square one because that was their problem. They weren't getting a lot of length. The Cubs picked up 2 starters. The Padres picked up 2 starters. The Sox had an opening to do that. They chose not to because of the high prices. They chose Luis Castillo because of the high price taking on money instead of giving up top prospects. We'll see. We'll see if it comes back to bite them. Right now, the division's so bad, they might be okay. But I don't know if they did enough. On paper, I don't think they did. But because of the division, they might be able to hang in there and win it.
All right, let's talk about the Red Sox, who, after winning on Wednesday, 30 wins in 35 games, which is insane. There certainly were rumblings in mid-June that maybe Craig Breslow, the head of baseball operations, would be in trouble at the end of the year. And now they go on this amazing streak. Big part of the reason why, is the bullpen that Breslow put together. 2.14 ERA, that's the best in baseball by far. Okay, the White Sox are next closest at 2.64, so half a run difference. Wilyer Abreu's been playing great. And Wilson Contreras, someone who you know well from his time with the Cubs, you covered him on a daily basis. I was thinking about this watching him play yesterday. When you remember Wilson, when he was with the Cubs, part of the criticism of him as a catcher was that he was emotional. Yeah. For pitchers and the question was, some of the emotions from his at-bats might carry over into how he's serving as a catcher. And I was kind of chuckling about that today because now when you watch them play, it's clear that emotionalism from Wilson is now part of what's great about the Red Sox. Like he competes every at-bat. He cares about every at-bat. He clearly has become a leader now in his early 30s. And you get to, you knew him as a young player. You see him as an older player. Tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, so let me go back to Craig Breslow for a second here. Craig Breslow, about 10 years ago in the Sporting News or one of these publications, was ranked as like the smartest person in sports. He's a very smart guy. Craig Breslow was with the Cubs at one time. What I'm getting at is you don't trade for Wilson Contreras without knowing what you're getting. And I haven't talked to Breslow about this, but I have to imagine they didn't mind that aspect of Contreras, that emotional, aggressive attitude that
edgy.
You're right, edgy. That's the best word for it. That if you're trading for it, that means you think you need it. And I was on your podcast when they fired Alex Cora, and I said to you, I thought it was very interesting. They didn't just bring in a babysitter interim manager. They brought in a young guy with a little pedigree in the family who knew these young players. And I said, let's see how this thing grows. Now, it didn't happen for so long that you figured, okay, it's not their year. That's the most surprising thing about the Red Sox, that it just flipped on a dime without any sort of forewarning. And Wilson, I think, has been part of it. I like that he's actually, since his suspension, really kept his emotions in check. So it's there. And he can go to it any time. And I saw Sam Antonacci give him an elbow last night, and everyone's thinking something's going to happen. But Wilson held back. I mean, that's another thing. Wilson's probably smarter than we give him credit for because he's so emotional. But those two things can still go together. And he does feel like one of the leaders on that team. There's no doubt. I was around them a few different times this year, and they turned to him. So if he keeps those emotions in check and brings them out when needed, that team might be able to do some damage. They already are. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it was interesting. You had the sign. You're right. The elbow 2 nights ago, right? He does the elbow. And Wilson, my sense of him is that when he had those blowups and he had the suspension, and this was around the time that you had the earthquakes in Venezuela, and all of that was sort of wrapped up into one. And I think that Wilson got a sense that, you know what, it was going too far. Because the other night when Antonacci does that thing where he sticks out his elbow at him, Wilson points like, okay, everybody saw it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody saw it.
Right.
And then last night, Wilson makes a great play, clearly anticipating that he's going to go around there. There was a throw to first base, and Antonacci's going around third base, and Wilson anticipates he's going to try to score. He throws him out by 10 feet early in the game, and then later, Sonny Gray drills him. And, Sonny Gray is someone with great command. I'm sure it was related to that, Jesse.
Yeah.
Hey, it's the dog days of August, and I think they're going to protect their own, and Wilson is one of their own.
Well, that's the great thing about hitting Sam Antonacci. You can do it on purpose and never be called out for it because Antonacci's like that old school guy that leans over the plate and takes it. So he's the right guy. But he's a rebel rouser too, Sam Antonacci. He's going to develop that kind of aggressive, edgy attitude. He already has it. So
reminds me of Adam Eaton. Remember?
Yeah. That's a great point.
He played kind of make people on the other team a little angry.
Yeah. It's fun, man. And seeing the Red Sox head towards the playoffs after their start, it's one of the best storylines of the season.
Yeah, one of the best things going on is the week after the trade deadline to see new players in new places, and it's also to see, guys, when young players get called up to the big leagues. How about George Lombard Jr., who hits a home run in his second plate appearance? His dad, who I know, bench coach for the Detroit Tigers, tip of the cap the Tigers for letting him go to his son's first game. He hits the home run, and at the same time, his other son, Jacob, hits his first professional home run. A really cool moment. And look, Jesse, he's one of these guys, when he got to the big leagues, there's so much advance notice. Tremendous background. The other day I was at visiting with Peter Gammons, a great writer, who mentioned George Lombard Sr. in his Hall of Fame speech back in, 2007? And he and George Sr. had been texting back and forth, congratulations on your son making the big leagues. George's mother was a civil rights activist who knew Martin Luther King. His great-grandfather was a professor at Harvard Business School for like 40 years. George Jr. has this great presence about him. He's a former soccer player, and right away, you see the athleticism from him.
And it's exactly as I think of the baseball aspect of it, such the boost the Yankees need through all these injuries and some underperformance, especially with Volpe and others. It's exactly the right time for that boost because this is the dog days and teams need a bit of a boost, even playoff teams. And then you hear better news, at least about Aaron Judge and some of that walking wounded. if he can continue with that energy boost and they get any of these guys back from injury, that team is still by far the best team in the American League, depending on, how far Boston goes. But when healthy, with a young player like George Lombard Jr. helping out, watch out for the Yankees.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, Judge is the X factor because we don't know how he's going to respond physically when he gets back. But you have Judge with Luis Garcia Jr. now. Cody Bellinger comes back. Giancarlo Stanton comes back. An improved defense. A lockdown left side, if you're talking about Lombard Jr. and Ryan McMahon on that side. A great rotation. And I think at some point, Ryan Weathers is going to transition to the bullpen, which makes a good group really good.
Yeah. They'll be the favorites if they're healthy in the American League. And that's the case all year, whether they win the division or not. That's how good they are when healthy. So we'll see. It's going to be a great finish. Bunch of divisions still up for grabs. Of course, there's a few that have huge leads, but the wild cards are still up for debate in both leagues. And, splitting hairs here. Who's going to make that third wild card in each league? We'll find out in short order. But I love this time of year because the teams are set. No waiver wire transactions. Let's go. Let's battle and see what comes out at the end.
There we go. All right, Jesse, thanks for doing this. Always fun.
Of course, Buster. Anytime. Be well.
The weekly guest is brought to you by 8 Sleep. And the weekly guest this week is Paula Mikidis, of course, known as Hembo. Hembo is a content producer at ESPN. I've been dealing with him all week, going on his show. It feels like starting at about 4 o'clock in the morning. We got emails flying back and forth through the trade deadline. Hembo, how you doing?
That sure has, Buster. We are now in the dog days. This is the time of year when the humidity is ratcheted up. The getaway days become a little bit testy, and you start to see some plunkings. And the time of year where we sort of separate the wheat from the chaff. So there's obviously a ton of storylines now coming off a really active deadline. It's going to be fascinating to see how things shake out here in the last 6 weeks of the
To your point, you had Mariners and Tigers, right? Brian Wu hitting 3 guys, then Cal Brawley gets hit, and then they hit Gleyber Torres. And I loved it because everyone was doing their job, and in the baseball context. It was cool.
That's right.
All right. So I have a question for you before we get to your list of items that you've researched for this week. A question you are going to love, okay? Rank the teams in Major League Baseball in order of who the Dodgers should fear the most, okay? From number 1, and I feel bad because I give you no warning on this, but I think you and I are going to fall along the same lines, okay? 1 through 5, teams in the Dodgers should fear most in their effort to go back to back to back. Who you got?
Okay. All right, Buster, I'm going to say that the team that the Dodgers should fear the most is the Milwaukee Brewers. Despite all of the things that everyone else, Buster, has done at the trade deadline, that is the team that I think has the most artillery to do it. We just saw Kyle Harrison come back and shove. He on top of a rotation with Jacob Mizorowski. But the biggest reason why I think Milwaukee is the biggest threat is this lineup is demonstrably better than what it was a year ago when the Dodgers swept them in the NLCS. When you consider what Chourio is doing, what Luis Lara and Cooper Pratt have added to that lineup, that is my team that I view as the biggest threat. Beyond that, Buster, I view it as a complete
let me just
cluster
I'll give you mine, and
Sure.
as we move forward, okay?
Yeah.
Number 1 for me are the Cubs.
Really?
I think this series demonstrated that. I get it. They don't have the swing and miss, but here's the thing. You got Kevin Gossman, you got Clay Holmes, you get 2 guys absolutely not going to be afraid of the moment. If the games 1 and 2, for argument's sake, are in the Dodger Stadium, they'll be fine. And you've got you think Alex Bregman's afraid of the moment? You think Dansby Swanson or PCA is not afraid of anything? I think you'd agree with me on that. So I think they're number 1, and we'll just go back and forth a little bit. But number 2, I have the San Diego Padres.
Really?
Who got better, and they've got that great bullpen with their rotation. And and I know this, they are not afraid of the Dodgers. They would love the opportunity to face the Dodgers in a 5-game series again and finish the job that they couldn't finish 2 years ago. So I got the Padres at 2. Who you got at 2 and 3?
I put the Cubs at 2 for most of the reasons that you just articulated. They just had, I think, one of the best trade deadlines that helped them in all the ways that they most need. And while, as you know, a big fear of mine for them was, are they going to have enough slug this year. The lineup is performing at a high level. It is among the best defenses in baseball. They can beat the Dodgers 3-2, as they've demonstrated, and can beat the Dodgers 8-6. So that's why they would, to me, be the second biggest threat. 3 on this list for me, and I'm not saying this as a biased Phillies fan, is the Phillies. And that's primarily because if we lived in a world in which, let's say in a best-of-5 series, Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo and Zach Wheeler pitched to the back of their baseball cards, and Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber ran into a couple, that to me provides the Phillies a very clear path to beat the Dodgers. I think they have a much better chance in a best-of-5 than a best-of-7, but I'd have the Phillies after the Brewers and after the Cubs.
All right, I'd have the Brewers at 3, and I'd have the Yankees at 4. I think that if Aaron Judge comes back and he's okay, and he can get back to close to the form that he was, and the Yankees don't really know how he's going to react once he gets into day-to-day baseball activities, that could be a really good team by the end of the year. Those are my 3 and 4. Who you got at 4 and 5?
I will take the Atlanta Braves at 4, even though they did not land Jacob deGrom at the deadline, which would have been a total game changer. This is now a team that is officially being slept on nationally. I view that definitively. No, they did not throw the haymaker at the deadline the way that so many thought, but this is still an outstanding lineup with Chris Sale at the top of the rotation, and we've seen them shorten games in the postseason and in large part win a World Series because of it. So I'll put the Braves at 4 and I'll put the Yankees at 5 for many of the reasons that you articulated. But if they're healthy come October, they're the team that Vegas is going to favor to win the American League, and so will I.
Yeah, and for my number 5, you could put the Red Sox in there if you wanted to. And then at that point, I think you're kind of stretching a little bit, but I'm going to go with the Rays.
Okay.
Like I love what the Rays did at the deadline was really underrated. A lot of how they come out of the deadline is going to depend on whether or not they can fix Freddie Peralta. There was a lot of criticism of the Mets for what they didn't get from Freddie Peralta. I was like, he had a terrible year, but he's got a great history, and the Rays have a great history of fixing pitchers. If they can do that and get him back to being a guy who could start a game 1, game 2, game 3, they could be an interesting team for sure with how they are. Junior Caminero in the postseason. I think Dave Roberts would just hold up 4 fingers every time he'd see Junior Caminero. He would pitch around him, which is part of the reason why they got Liam Hicks to put some depth and potentially, have a surtax for pitching around Junior Caminero. Okay. There's so much talk this week about the Dodgers breaking baseball. They're prohibitive favorites. What do you got there?
So, as you and I speak, the Dodgers haven't won in a week. They're riding a 6-game losing streak. But that obviously hasn't stopped all the conversation from the talk of how they're ruining baseball, how the Tarik Skubal trade further exacerbates the impending lockout, and all those kinds of things. So I looked up 2 different ways, Buster, to demonstrate numerically how the Dodgers are such a prohibitive favorite. I'm going to start by using the Fangraphs % chance to win the World Series, which is something that you often reference, their playoff odds. What I did was effectively freeze those odds at the trade deadline every single year for which they have record. And what I discovered, Buster, was that the Dodgers' 29% chance to win the World Series this year at the deadline was the highest that Fangraphs offered at the deadline for any year for which they had tracking, which goes back to 2014. But I can raise you one better by using Vegas odds, for which we can go back much further. As you and I speak, the Dodgers are plus 160 to win the World Series at DraftKings Sportsbook. The last team that entered the postseason shorter than 160 was actually the Yankees back in 2006. It's been 20 years. That's a team that lost in the American League Division Series in 4 games to Detroit. Buster, the last team that entered the postseason shorter than just 2-1 were the Phillies back in 2011, a year in which they lost to the Cardinals in the National League Division Series in a best-of-5, which is to say, even though those odds tell you that the Dodgers are a prohibitive favorite, what history should tell us is that it is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a fait accompli. We are seeing some of the issues that we have worried about with the Dodgers rear their heads right now. So I refuse to view the rest of the season as a nihilist, even though the Dodgers, we know, are the team to beat.
Well, I agree with everything you just said. Like, I think the Dodgers are clearly, with that incredible depth they have in their rotation, the pitching staff, they should be the favorites, but they've got cracks.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to see them. The 2 catchers who are hurt, Mookie Betts is not having a good year. Kyle Tucker, he's hit better in recent days, but he's 119th out of 148 hitters in wins above replacement. I think that They will be, and here's the other thing too, and you know this, like every game they play the rest of the year and into the postseason, they're going to get everybody's A game. Those Yankees teams that had coverage in the late 90s experienced that. And yes, you get into the postseason and their experience becomes a weapon and guys can turn it on. Like one of the segments we did on Get Up this morning was the Dodgers 6 straight losses. That a bad week or a bad sign? It's a bad week. Like they'll get refocused. They'll play the Diamondbacks this weekend. They'll probably play better. They'll beat the heck out of the Royals next week. Dave Roberts will be telling his guys, lock it down, lock it up, and they'll put it back in. But they're not invulnerable. There's no doubt about it. All right. One of the teams I mentioned that I think could beat them would be the Padres. And they've had this surge. I mean, 3 weeks ago, they looked like they're going to trade Mason Miller, looked like they're going to trade Morejon, and now they're playing well. What do you got there?
Well, for the first time this season, Buster, Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado and Jackson Merrill are hitting simultaneously. And that dynamic is, at least in my view, what empowered A.J. Preller to do what he did at the trade deadline, because those 3 players necessitated he buy and not sell. Through the month of May, that trio owned an OPS of 632. Just for some context, the worst hitting team in the major leagues this year, the Blue Jays, own a OPS of 679. So the 3 best players on the Padres were performing worse than the worst lineup in Major League Baseball by a lot. They improved some in the month of June. It shot up to 750, but it's not, of course, what you come to expect from those 3 guys. Buster, in July and August, those 3 players are slashing 284, 353, 497. Wow. That's an 850 combined OPS from their big 3. Buster, during that period of time, their starters have run an ERA north of 5. They're averaging only 4 innings per start, and yet they have managed to hold the fort, going 16-15 during a period of time in which they absolutely got nothing from their starting rotation. Now, the question, of course, is it too little too late for the Padres, who, if they had gotten representative play from their big 3 the first few months of the season, would probably be in a stronger playoff position right now, it goes without saying. I'd probably give them something like a 1-in-3 chance. But look, they've only got the Dodgers one more time left. Their schedule's reasonable. I could see the Padres' fate coming down to the very last weekend of the season when they play the Diamondbacks, the last 3 games of it.
So I'm going to go one step further, and I agree with you. Let's say not only give you the list of the 5 teams the Dodgers should fear the most difficult path for the Dodgers through the postseason, and it would be really hard for them to get through this, I think, if they were to play, because they're, let's say they're going to win the National League West. Let's say they're the 3 seed, which is where they are as of Thursday morning. Let's say they play the San Diego Padres in that best of 3 wild card, okay? I mean, on edge. You go from that, and let's say they face the Philadelphia. Well, who would they play? 3-2. So they would face, as of today, they would face Atlanta, right? Or potentially, or Philadelphia, one of those 2 teams. And then they would face the Cubs. And then I think the most difficult American League team for them to face would be the Yankees, right, who, if they reach the World Series, the Yankees reach the World Series, that will be a team you not want to face.
No question about it. No, Buster, the Dodgers are going to be more vulnerable, in my view, earlier in the postseason. If they find themselves in position to have to play that best of 3, you're losing game 1 away from needing to win 2 elimination games. By the way, something that they were required to do in the 2024 Division Series against San Diego. The idea that this is a fait accompli is not true. There were 3 moments in Game 7 of the World Series last year that could have changed the fate of history. The Dodgers have a straightforward path, which we know, but by no means are these the cheat code warriors that had no chance of losing. I'm not here for that conversation.
Yeah. And another day we'll debate whether or not the Dodgers would have traded for Skubal this year if they had lost last year's World Series, because I don't think they would have.
Good thought.
All right. Luis Arraez, your Phillies picked him up. 3-time batting champion. He has never been really valued in the marketplace because he doesn't run well. He doesn't hit for power. What do you see in Luis Arraez?
I'm seeing a hitter in Luis Arraez that has never been better than he is right now, which of course is saying something considering those 3 batting titles that he's won, which you mentioned. It's going to be 4 very likely after this season. I think, Buster, that fans around baseball, even those romantic ones, look at his .318 career average and understand how great that is. But when you consider the context of the leagues in which he has played, during the span of his career, the league has hit 246. What I'm going to do for you, Buster, is just read among live ball debutants. So these are players since 1920. The top 5 adjusted batting average based on their environments. All right, Wade Boggs is 5th. Rod Carew is 4th. Tony Gwynn is 3rd. Ted Williams is 2nd, and Luis Arraez is 1st. Luis Arraez, when just looking at his batting average relative to the league, is the best player of the last 100 years. But I don't even think that's worth talking about because everyone knows he hits for a high average. The internet baseball class has decided that doesn't matter at all. So let's talk about something else. Let's talk about that third component of the slash line. He's slugging 448. The league is slugging 401. He is outslugging Mike Trout and Julio Rodriguez and Manny Machado and a bunch of guys who are known, of course, for their slug. So the question I asked myself was, how? How has this version of Luis Arraez unlocked this kind of power? And the answer is that he's optimizing his pull side, Buster. I was surprised to learn that he is to his pull side, hitting the ball on the ground a career low 57% of the time, lifting the ball 24% of the time, which is a career high, and thus slugging 626. That's right. Luis Arraez is slugging 626 to his pull side. And running these numbers, Buster, harkened me back to a conversation that you and I have had before. I think it was back in 1992 when Ted Williams and Tony Gwynn met each other. Look, you know the story that I'm about to share. You take it from here because you can tell it far better than I can.
Okay, so those two guys talked about hitting, two of the great hits, two great hitters of all time. And Tony Gwynn, to that point, had basically been a singles hitter, right? He would collect 200 hits every year. And opposing pitchers, and I had conversations with them, their feeling was, you know what? Facing Tony Gwynn, the big thing is I know he's probably going to line drive someplace, so I'm going to just throw him a fastball that he can hit to left field, get his signal, and he's not going to do damage. Well, in the latter stage of his career, Tony learned, because of his incredible bat-to-ball skills, learned that he would look for situations where he would drive the ball, which he, of course, could do really effectively because of the great bat-to-ball skills. And so through his knowledge of opposing pitchers, using the videotape, looking at different counts, he began to look for opportunities to drive the ball. In the second half of his career, he was a very different hitter with slug than he was in the first half of his career. And I had a conversation with Anthony Gwynn when he was when the Padres acquired Luis Arraez. Who does Arraez remind you of? He goes, no question, my dad.
Man.
And I think the comparison, the similarities, Hembo, continue based on what you're telling me.
Look, man, you can compare without equating. Tony Gwynn's a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest hitters of all time. Luis Arraez is not that. But if there's anything that we can learn from Tony Gwynn's career, is that you can transform yourself while you're having it. And Luis Arraez, though he doesn't have anywhere close to premium bat speed, has demonstrated to me this year that he has multiple clubs in his bag, which could mean a very prosperous 30s for a player that the analytical community had totally left for dead.
Especially since he's paying attention to defense. Tony Gwynn always paid attention to defense, and though he didn't have great defensive skills, he was a good defender, right? Because of his details. And Luis Arraez, he didn't run as well as Tony did, but they are very similar in terms of what they do at the plate. And I do find it funny that in the rooms when teams do, front offices do the evaluations in November, the conversation is about Luis Arraez is about what he can't do. And I know this, and I think you'd agree with me. Bases loaded, 1 out, postseason, tie score, bottom of the 9th inning. Who's the guy that managers would not want to see in the box? It would be Luis Arraez, because he's going to hit the ball hard someplace.
Which is why I commend Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies front office for not saying, let's find an archetype. Let's find the best right-handed hitting outfielder. No, he asked himself, who's the best bat available? We're going to get that guy. It's a much better strategy than trying to square peg and round hole something, whereas the Phillies are made much better despite the fact that he's a contact hitter primarily who does hit from the left side.
All right, let's talk about Jeremy Pena. The American League West is such a puzzle to us. First couple months of the season, I had the GMs of other teams saying the Astros should sell. They should sell. They should sell, including Jeremy Pena. But now, as the Astros plow forward, Yordan Alvarez, Jeremy Pena, two of the reasons why they might win this division again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yordan Alvarez is the biggest reason, but Jeremy Pena is right on his tails. I mean, he is enjoying a stretch of standout play buster that I was surprised to learn stretches well beyond this season. I looked at his last 162 games, so this takes us back to May of last year. As a neutral plus defender at shortstop, I think these numbers are going to really blow your mind. It's 105 runs, 201 hits with 26 homers and 23 steals, during which time he owns a WRC plus of 144. That is 19% higher than any shortstop in baseball over the last 13 months. Buster, over that period of time, he's collected 7.8 wins above replacement, during which time, looking back at the last 162 games for every single shortstop in baseball, only Bobby Witt Jr. has outperformed him in that world. And so if we are living in a world in which Willy Adames gets 7 for 182, Dansby Swanson gets 7 for 177, Jeremy Pena, who's a free agent after next season, I think could easily command a 5 or 6 year deal upwards of $30 million a year based on the amalgamation of his skill and the fact that he's really at his apex right now. What say you?
I look, there's no question he's taken a big step forward. I'm really curious. And when we talk about contract numbers, I'm a little reluctant to dive into that because we don't know what the financial system's going to be. If, in fact, there's a salary cap when baseball resumes in 2027, then I think everyone at the top of the food chain is going to take a step back, if that makes some sense.
Yeah, sure.
So, we'll see. But there's no question he's put himself in a great position. And, people were talking in mid-July about what's the best thing the Red Sox could add. And they certainly had conversations about Otto Lopez. Jeremy Pena, that product from the University of Maine, he would have been a good ad for the Red Sox.
No kidding. No. He's become a star, truly.
Yep, exactly. All right, Hembo, thanks for doing this. We're going to talk about the Guardians next week, the team from which I'm looking for an annulment. Thank you.
Oh, fair enough. I'll look forward to that. Later, friends.
That was the Weekly Guest, brought to you by 8 Sleep, the smart mattress cover trusted by some of baseball's greatest. Use code BASEBALLTONIGHT for up to $350 off.
Sarah Langs is a reporter and producer for MLB.com, and every week she joins us for the numbers game.
Number 3.
Matt Olson played his 896th consecutive game on Wednesday, dating to May 2nd, 2021, giving him sole possession of the 8th longest streak in MLB history. Next up on the list is Joe Sewell with 1,103 games.
Number 2.
It was quite a day on Tuesday for the Lombard brothers. George Lombard Jr. hit a homer with a 33-degree launch angle and a 100.2 mile per hour exit velocity. His brother Jacob hit a homer with a 33-degree launch angle and a 99.9 mile per hour exit velocity. Both came in their second plate appearance off a breaking ball hit to left center against a Cardinals affiliate, both in their respective MLB and minor league debuts.
Number 1.
Shohei Ohtani and Pete Crow-Armstrong both hit leadoff home runs on Wednesday at Wrigley. There's never been an MLB game where two players who went on to finish top 10 in MVP in the same league that year, let alone top 2, both hit leadoff home runs. We'll know officially in November, but it's pretty fair to assume this will have been the first.
Hardy Buster Bleacher Tweets for a Friday.
All right, Taylor, before we get going, you and I haven't talked. I mean, Tuesday, Wednesday were just crazy. We had the deadline. We had all kinds. We did that the live show with Jeff Passan, myself, Tim Kirchin. What was that show like for you to do? Because there was a lot of moving parts in that, a lot of graphics, and you got a great response.
Yeah, it was a great show. I was glad we could get all the boys involved. We kind of did a Sports Center bit where we went around the globe and talked to Alden, Jesse, Jorge, Kylie. Tim Kirchin rolled in late, had to contend with a mannequin that we tried to replace him with unsuccessfully. He got it out of the chair.
He grabbed the cod piece. Right away, went right to the cod piece. I was like, that surprised me a little bit.
I won't read too much into that, but yeah. And then the fact that Tim,
he was exhausted like I was. Him grabbing the, just reflexively, just trying to move the thing and grabbing the codpiece was like me picking the Guardians, right, in the American League.
Right, right. And it was also funny. He was so delirious that he told Deli, our fellow producer here, he was like he had to go to a sports center hit or something. He's like, I know exactly where the studio is. Those were his words. And then if you watch the show, you know that he wandered around like a small child until someone directed him in the right room. So
I can
lot of
relate.
fun.
I was kind of bounced. I mean, I did a cow milking in that studio once and I couldn't find it. Like, so you know, it's funny as when you go on campus every so often, you're reminded just how big a universe ESPN is.
Yeah, and you almost had me driving off the road because you dropped the Adley Rutschman news as I was driving into work. So I'm glad I made it in safely. Mark
Oh,
did
and I
safe.
depressed Michael Epstein, who was one of the Sports Center producers. I'm walking in. He goes, the stuff about Adley. He said, I don't think they'll trade him. Like, they wouldn't have the gumption. You tanked all those seasons. Are you really going to do this? And then, 5 minutes later, I was texting with someone. They're like, yeah, the deal's in place. They just have to wait for the Red Sox. They have to find John Henry to okay it. And Epi was like, you just told me.
The dang Red Sox, dude. It's it's bad times.
Dang Red Sox. How about the dang Orioles?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like sending him to the Red Sox, like I could have rationalized it if he went to the Brewers.
Should I tell
or
him
the
what you said in my ear when we were doing that show as we get
Yeah.
ready to give a grade to the Orioles?
Yeah, go ahead.
You said, get him.
And you did. And if you listen to
because I just think it's ridiculous. You can't just keep saying, oh, our prospects, 8 years of our prospects.
And then, like, why would any Orioles fan have faith in Michael
Believe it.
to develop develop prospects? He can't do it. He's proved he can't do it. Why does anyone want him around?
I don't know if I'm ready to go that far, but I know this. All their prospects stall at the big league level.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They plateau. There is a ceiling on what he and his coaching staff and the organization is able to do right now. And unless there's like drastic change, I don't know why any Orioles fan would believe in what he's able to do. So,
well, here's the thing too, and sorry to go on this Orioles tangent, which we didn't plan. Maybe this is just going to be the Bleacher Tweets.
Yeah, why not?
I was reading something post deadline. They're like, well, that pitching that they didn't develop, it looks like it's starting to come together. And I'm going, yeah, but guess what? They just traded Adley Rutschman. Gunnar Henderson's going to be out the door soon. He's a Scott Boras client. He's not going to re-sign there. Like all these position players they've drafted start cycling out, and then we're going to be saying, yeah, but what about the position players?
And I mean, when they had their 101 win season, I mean, like again, Mike Elias, like not really committing to any sort of strategy, hugging his prospects. Like that was the year to go get it, and they went and got Jack Flaherty. They like half-assed it. Like
and they've now sold twice when they were 2 games out of the wild card. I don't know if you agree with my comparison. That's like a guy who hits a ground ball, right? Hits a ground ball to second base, and he's 60 feet down the line. He's like, nah, you know what? I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to turn around and go to the dugout. You don't run out the ground ball, you're not going to have success. And they haven't run out the ground ball repeatedly. I think Orioles fans have gotten to the point where, yeah, okay, we won the trade. We got a lot of good prospects. We're going to kick the can down the road again? Come on.
There's too many fans being like, well, actually, this is I just don't. Again, I don't know how you have faith in Elias. A lot of people kept asking me, Buster. I think you said a couple times, including on our show. You were like, an Orioles fan texted me. This is like one of the saddest days he's had as a fan, and everyone's like, was that you, Taylor? And I said, no.
No, it wasn't. The same person also sent me the great line about David Rubenstein. I want to make clear, like when they were tanking, David was not the owner, but as you know, he's a philanthropist, a wealthy philanthropist, and he also owns the Magna Carta. And this person also texted me, at some point, you have to have more playoff wins than Magna Cartas.
That is a great line.
It's a great line by a person who I have great respect for.
All right, we will we don't have to respond to any of these, but just some reaction from the Bleacher tweeters. Martin Brownsy, he gives the Guardians deadline an A+++++.
Yeah.
Mark Charbonneau says classic Jerry Dipoto didn't add enough bullpen help, just like last year. Phil in Manchester, New Jersey loves what the White Sox did at the trade deadline. He says Dodgers, White Sox in the World Series. You heard it here first. And Amy Chapman with the nuanced trade deadline take. She said this is my least favorite time of year because it's when it shows teams show show their fans that they really don't care about winning by either not going for it or just dismantling anything. She's on Bitter Boulevard because she's a Mets and a Tigers fan. So there you go.
I think Amy will agree with my comparison with not running out of ground ball, right? Because what would a front office person say if a player just stopped 2/3 of the way to first base, right? And that's where we are. We're 4 months into a 6-month season. If a player just stopped 60 feet down the line, said, screw it. I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to give up. That's what they're doing. And I don't get it. Like, you get into this because you're trying to win. You're a couple games out and you pack it in. Come on.
Orioles only a half game out of a playoff spot, Buster.
How about
the sweat.
Right.
We got a sweat. We got a playoff sweat. I'm going to keep watching them. I'm watching 12:30 today.
But you know what? You got prospects.
Tired of the prospects, dude. I can't stand the actually. We got a good return. Come on.
Right.
Everybody.
They won the trade. Let's all acknowledge that. They won the trade according to the industry models and standards. But the bottom line is, what's the last year they won a playoff game?
Was that 2014? It's been over a decade. I mean, what are we doing?
Long time.
I'm old now, Buster. I was youthful back then. All right, that's it for Bleacher Tweets. Thanks, everyone. Great week of shows, Buster.
Absolutely. And thanks for your effort, Taylor. Great as always. Thanks to you and Deli and everybody back in Bristol. Thanks for watching the Baseball Tonight podcast presented by La Quinta by Wyndham. Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow you shine. My thanks in today's show to Jesse Rogers, to Paul Embikides. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. And remember, hate and inequality based on skin color is something we need to fight against every single day.